Stormwater and Sustainability. Oh, thank you, Missy. Lindsay DeMarzo serves as the Senior Stormwater and Sustainability Programs Manager for Howard County, Maryland's Office of Community Sustainability. She manages Howard County's commercial stormwater partnerships, as well as oversees stormwater policy, residential and nonprofit water quality programs, pilot project development, and nature-based climate solutions. Ms. DeMarzo has worked for Howard County for over 18 years in stormwater and sustainability. Then we have Viktor Hlas. Viktor is an engineer and president at Opti, a leading provider of digital adaptive stormwater control solutions. He leverages his expertise in water resources management and low impact development to help communities combat the impacts of climate change, aging infrastructure, urbanization, and water pollution caused by stormwater runoff. And then last but not least, we have Marissa O'Neill. Marissa is based in Washington, D.C., where she supports community engagement and environmental education efforts related to watershed protection for the district's Department of Energy and Environment, or DOEE. Marissa joined the agency in 2024 after working in nonprofit communications for several years and earning her master's degree in environmental studies from the University of Pennsylvania. She also chairs the Chesapeake Bay Program Stewardship Work Groups and welcomes folks to reach out if interested in joining. So with that, I will hand it over to Marissa to get our presentation started.
Okay, can everybody see my slides okay?
Yes, that looks great.
Awesome. Hi, all. My name is Marissa O'Neill, and I work in the Partnering and Engagement branch in our Watershed Protection Division at DOEE. And as was just shared, I joined the agency a little less than 2 years ago. And actually, the program that I'll be sharing about today, Community Stormwater Solutions, is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. So I'm excited to share a bit of its history and the great work that my colleagues and community partners have done before I joined, as well as the work that we're doing today. And I just wanted to highlight the photo on this page. I really like this collage of storm drain murals that Anacostia Watershed Society produced through a grant back in 2017 through this program, because I think it really captures the heart of this program I'm going to be sharing about. It shows the creativity, it captures some local DC culture and environment, and connects with stormwater issues. So first, I'll share a little bit about the origins of this program. The Community Stormwater Solutions Grant Program started in 2016 as a grant program fully managed by DOEE in-house, and it's funded by two separate sources. One is the Anacostia Cleanup and Protection Fund, which those of you that live in the district may be familiar with our 5-cent bag fee, and that's a major revenue source for the fund, and also the DC Stormwater Enterprise Fund funds this work as well. So this program was really created with the goal in mind of trying to better engage residents, local businesses, NGOs in projects that deepen their connection to their environment, understanding the benefits of a healthy watershed, and really specifically trying to increase their knowledge, change behavior through creative, out-of-the-box ways, programs that might not fit into more rigid grant funding programs that have, kind of select things that they're looking for. And, as is clear, I think, in the title of the program, it's very community focused. And with that in mind, we have kind of a broad interpretation of stormwater, ranging from true small green infrastructure installations, but also including adult and youth education programs, outreach campaigns, artwork, community events, and things like that. So at the bottom here, I have a few examples from the early days of the program. The first on the left was done by Anacostia Waterfront Trust in partnership with Anacostia Watershed Society. And they had this mobile installation of green infrastructure that they brought around to several sites throughout the year of Anacostia that was being celebrated that year, with the goal of just educating the public about the value of green infrastructure in public spaces, and sharing that with them, in real time. The next one is Studio DC, which was a project from Design Virtue that worked with 10 high school students, and it helped them explore how to apply design thinking skills to water quality issues in Hickey Run and Nash Run subwatersheds. They visited stormwater design projects across the city, engaging with the design professionals about those stormwater challenges. And you can see here an example of one of the designs they worked on together. And then lastly, on this page, the Saving Our Native Grasslands program that Anacostia Watershed Society did as well, where they worked with a variety of schools and did all sorts of types of projects like constructing bee houses, restoring meadow habitat on Kingman and Heritage Islands, trash removals, all programs that kind of celebrated the diversity of our habitats and the functions they have in maintaining healthy watersheds. Next, just a few more examples. This one on the left is a rainwater harvesting system that George Washington University students had a grant for, and these have solar pumps in them, which they use for irrigation for their student-run community gardens. They also involved design students to create the murals, so it really engaged, multiple types of student groups at the university. On the right here is a toolkit that was put together by Natural Resources Design and Design Green. And this was really created to support one of DOE's flagship stormwater programs, River Smart, and specifically River Smart Schools, where a key challenge the program has faced is how to, inspect and maintain BMP's best management practices after initial installations, after initial support from grant funds. And it reviews different common issues that occur, gives types of solutions and other resources. And then lastly, example before the next section, I just wanted to share this one that I thought was really fun, that a dance studio, Dance Place did, where they were drawing attention to how stormwater is collected and captured into a rain barrel. So they had these fun kind of little designs leading down the downspout that ultimately collected in this rain barrel. And they also had some other fun hands-on projects with their dancers and families, including interpretive stormwater dances, rain garden installations, and other projects. Then in 2019, after several years of success through the program, the agency decided to pivot to a different model. We want to continue to emphasize the diverse set of organizations that should be a part of fostering healthy watersheds, whether their core mission is focused on the environment or not. But we wanted to also better support lower capacity organizations not as familiar with grant making, especially government grants. So what we did was create the Community Stormwater Solutions Evaluation and Expansion Grant. And through this model, we administered a grant where our request for applications was specifically for one organization to then administer an RFA on our behalf, but support the different applicants throughout the process and support those grantees once they're awarded as well. And through this model, we worked with the Chesapeake Bay Trust was our grantee for this, and they've been able to host grant writing workshops, do different capacity building trainings with folks, help walk them through the application process, and then still bring on an external technical review committee to review the grant. So they're still going through a rigorous competitive process. But, for those that may have applied or managed government grants before, there's often kind of restrictions preventing agencies working directly with applicants for good reasons. But, as this model, we really wanted to specifically make it a part of the deliverable for our grantee, Chesapeake Bay Trust, to actually provide that support to grantees throughout the process. And another shift in the program, we were able to increase the awards to $35,000. They initially were $20,000 when the program first started. So that gave some groups a little bit more funding to work with on these small pilot projects. And since we started that process, we've had 5 rounds of applications up to that $35,000 limit. And then we just introduced mini grants last year. And the trust also brought in this idea of a connector group where a smaller grassroots group has also been providing hands-on assistance and bringing in new voices into the conversation. This slide, I just wanted to kind of emphasize, the different partnership levels that are part of this program. So, of course, DOEE, we're administering the grant to the Chesapeake Bay Trust. There's the connector group that I just mentioned, and they're working with subgrantees. But often those subgrantees are working with other partners, ultimately, of course, they're serving the community, working with the community members or providing programs for them. And, a lot of times, kind of unlikely stormwater advocates will team up with other groups that have expertise to, which I think really shows that there's a lot of roles that community groups can play. Some unique examples we've had recently through this iteration of the program, the National Wildlife Federation, through their Sacred Grounds program, works with religious congregations to show how native plantings and stormwater solutions can connect with values of caring for creation. And they also use this as a way to connect people with other DOE-funded programs like our River Smart programs, tree giveaways. We have another grantee right now called Gentrified Wood that's merging the work they do with woodworking workshops to repurpose discarded salvage wood into functional, artistic community structures, and they're integrating stormwater education into that program. And they're also working with an organization called Voices Unbarred to engage returning citizens and other groups into the program. So again, some kind of non-traditional groups that we're working with to deliver these solutions. Just to share a few program stats. So since the program started, we've distributed about $2.2 million to DC-based orgs. We've had 9 cycles of grants and this one new mini grant cycle, awarded 99 projects of just under 100. And I think an important thing there is that we really try to, while we welcome groups to apply again and can be awarded for multiple cycles of the grant, we really have an emphasis on trying to bring in new grantees to this, or if a grantee is applying again, encourage them to try a different type of project. Because a goal of this is really to pilot things, try it out, see how they work, and then hopefully, if there's a next step for them of wanting to advance that work, they can apply to a larger funding source with proof that this example model works. Here's a few other just quick examples of some recent projects, just to show really kind of the breadth of everything that's included in this program. We've had rain barrel installations in overburdened communities. We've done watershed inspired murals and different art installations. There's been educational bike rides. There's been schoolyard programs. So all kind of getting at different ways to creatively tap into these different communities and share how they have a role to play in these conversations and in this work. And lastly, I'll just share a little bit about the future of the program. So right now we have several active projects. There's 6 through the main grantee program and 5 mini sub-grantees. They're all doing great work right now and have a lot of events coming up in the spring. And so I think they'll drop a link in the chat to our webpage for the program. And on there we have our newsletter, the Watershed Partners newsletter that DOE puts out every month, which has different opportunities related to funding. We share out program highlights, different events, and things like that. So in the March edition, we'll be sharing a summary of some of these upcoming community events that hopefully some of you can attend. I guess to end on a more negative note, just that currently we don't have funding for this current fiscal year 26. So after these grants close, we don't have any new RFAs going out for the time being. As many of us are all experiencing different funding cuts. We're really hoping to continue the program in future years once these situations can resolve. And I think we'll be talking a bit more about funding and kind of how to pivot in our discussion later on. So I'll end there for now. And yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, Marissa. As we hand it over to Lindsay and Victor, one quick sort of specific question we had in the chat was, if you know what the top of the water collection rain tank is made of. It was the image before the dance studio and looks like a satellite dish. If that rings a bell.
Oh yeah, the George Washington University. I'm not sure, but I can look into that. I'll look back into there. That was before my time, but one that captured my eye when preparing this. So I'll look into that and see if I can find more details, and can drop in the chat. Thanks.
Okay, great. And we have one more. And Lindsay, feel free to pull up your slides if you're ready to go. But is the MS4 program using your program as part of their compliance activities. Do you know, Marissa?
Sorry about that. Lost the Zoom page for a minute. Yeah, so we do feed into our MS4 report. So the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, that's one of the funding sources of this program, funds projects like grant activities to for the MS4 process. So yeah, we do submit information for those reports.
Great, thank you. All right, and I can see Lynn's, there we go. Looks great, Lindsay. All right, whenever you're ready.
Great. Hi, everyone.
Oh, we're back on the on your view.
Yes.
There we go. Yep.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself before I went to presentation mode. So
No problem.
all good. All right. So I thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to be here with Viktor and share a bit of our experience conquering Troy Hill. So we worked with the Troy Hill Business Park Association on a unique partnership. And so we will be sharing that with you today. And no joke, the journey was long and difficult. It was trying, but we made it through. And it took a lot of creativity from all of us. So we're excited to share the success with you today. To start, a little bit of background in Howard County. We are responsible through our stormwater management program, both for water quantity, flood control, and water quality efforts. So many of you are probably familiar with some of our unfortunately famous floods of 2018 that destroyed historic Ellicott City Main Street and did a ton of damage. So we want to work on making our communities more resilient to these flooding impacts and these storm events that we are seeing an increase of. Likewise, we're required by the state to meet our permit requirements and to treat our impervious surface. So the county recognizes that 70% of county land is owned by private entities. So we need them to cooperate with us and collaborate and partner with us. So we have various partnership and programs for all sorts of different entities, as you can see here. And our Office of Sustainability oversees those private property efforts. The Department of Public Works oversees our capital projects, and we are all housed under the umbrella of Clean Water Howard. You can see the logo in the corner. So everyone understands that their watershed protection fee that they pay into each year is being put to work. They recognize the projects through the Clean Water Howard logo as utilizing those fee funds and understand how they're being put into play. So today I'm going to talk a bit about a commercial entity and our commercial partnership program. In 2016, we held a commercial stormwater task force, and we heard from them about their needs and about what they wanted to see and how we could better interact with them because we were having a hard time getting them on board. And from that, we heard that they wanted better incentive programs. So from there, we shortly after cooperated and collaborated with Walmart to create a partnership program as our first pilot partnership. And what we did there is essentially look to retrofit the stormwater pond on their property. And in doing so, we needed them to also participate and have some value in the project. So we asked them to put forth some of the funds for the retrofit. And so we came to the terms of understanding that they would put forth several years worth of their stormwater fee into the initial fund of the project. And the county would then credit their stormwater fee for 10 years after that. So that worked well. It was great, very successful. And then we came to other sites and it didn't work so well. So here we are at Troy Hill and we had to rethink our program. So we had to look outside the box. It was a much different situation. As you can see here, there are quite a few stakeholders involved. So the property, as you can tell on the right, is a large business park and it is 14 different parcels with 9 different property owners. So already adding a lot more complexity. There are 5 stormwater ponds at the business park. You can see 1, 2, and 3 are labeled, and then there are 2 on the opposite side. We were only able to work on retrofitting those 3 initially, and that is what our focus of this project was. So we not only had to identify the stakeholders, as you can see on this like wedding cake tier here that we have going on, but we also had to understand how they worked together and how they interacted so that we could incentivize that behavior change amongst all of the partners. So as you can see here, we have a little bit of a spider web, but things that we were looking at initially is how to get the commercial landowners to buy in, right? Their job and their focus is business. They're making money, they're selling a product, they're doing other things. They're not necessarily having stormwater top of mind, and that's understandable. Likewise, I don't have business top of mind. I don't understand half the things that they do, right? So we needed to meet them where they were. We needed to get them on board and get their buy-in and support. So looking at ways that we could do that, how their ROI would shake out, how they could use this as corporate sustainability goals, meeting that they're aim for. And so we worked with them to get them on board. So as you can see from the spider web, starting at the bottom, we have the 9 commercial landowners who are paying maintenance fees to the Troy Hill Business Park Management Association here. And the Troy Hill Business Park Management Association is basically like a homeowners association for the business park. So just like you or I might pay HOA fees regularly, they're paying maintenance fees. Those fees are then given to Cushman Wakefield, the property management company, who hires a landscaper who manages the pond. So again, back to those layers of the cake of stakeholders. So the Business Management Association is under obligation from Howard County to maintain the stormwater features that were put in with the development initially. So we inspect triennially, they're required to maintain them, they own them. And so the fees that the landowners are paying are used to maintain them. Likewise, the commercial landowners are also paying into their annual watershed protection fee directly to the county. And those are the fees that we collect that go to the stormwater fund and then go to put projects in the ground. Now, one of the challenges here was not just this complication of stakeholders, but also that unlike our past project with Walmart, we had multiple landowners, right? And so they were all dealing with different budgets and different scenarios, and they were not able to put the money forth initially to pay towards the retrofit of their stormwater ponds. So we had to rethink. We completely redesigned the parameters of the partnership and looked at how we could still keep them involved, even though they couldn't put that money forth initially. So we took a step back and reassessed and creatively came up with the idea of having them pay their watershed protection fee for the first few years into the normal fee system as their investment. And then in years 3 through 10, they would receive the credit off their stormwater fee. So at the end of the day, it's still the same contribution. It's still the same crediting system. It's just a different mechanism to get there. So that solved that problem. Then we had to tackle the problem or the challenge of how we were going to equitably give credit on their stormwater fee in future years, because not all 9 commercial landowners drain to ponds 1, 2, and 3. As I mentioned, there were 5 ponds. So of course, some of them are draining to ponds 4 and 5. Some properties are split. So how were we to do that? So we looked at how much impervious surface each of the properties were contributing to the overall impervious of the business park. And we did a ratio of crediting based upon that. So now we have an equitable crediting system for any commercial entity in the business park who wishes to join the partnership. So from this, we learned a lot of lessons, and we were able to then take away a transferable and adaptable financial and partnership model for future sites, which was a great success. So as you can see here, kind of an aerial of the site, you can see ponds 1, 2, and 3 there, and it is largely a commercial industrial area. And so there is quite a bit of runoff getting to these ponds. So our goal was really to reduce the stormwater that was flowing into the stream nearby, because downstream was a more vulnerable watershed or a vulnerable neighborhood who was more susceptible to flooding. So we wanted to try to withhold some of those waters, providing water quality and quantity control. So we really developed some champions amongst all of this. It was several years in the making, and we got there. So the partners in the project are seeing over $160,000 per year in savings on their stormwater fee, which is excellent. We're seeing, of course, water pollution reduction, and then there's also great corporate sustainability that they're able to feature as well. So we're very excited about that. Now, to share with you some of the innovative aspects of the project that we actually put in the ground, I will toss it over to Viktor, and just let me know to forward the slides.
Thank you, Lindsay. And as you said, this was like innovation squared, just structuring the deal and the partnership, and then also our approach on how we retrofit these projects. So I know CSN introduced this as looking at smart stormwater management. And just to give everyone a sense, the American Society of Civil Engineers defines smart infrastructure as using advanced technology to improve functionality, sustainability, and resilience. And a lot of times that includes real-time monitoring and intelligent systems to adapt to environmental changes to improve performance and safety. So in taking that definition and being a little more specific, in stormwater, we've coined the term continuous monitoring and adaptive control, or CMAC, which utilizes sensors, hardware, and software to really optimize the performance of stormwater infrastructure. And taking that idea of smart infrastructure into the context of stormwater, one of the really important elements of predictive or adaptive controls is incorporating the weather forecast, what's expected to happen in the future, in order to drive better decisions before, during, and after the event. So this diagram shows a generic sort of view of both hardware components, which has real-time sensors, like level monitoring as a surrogate for how much capacity do I have in the system at any given time. A valve or a pump. In a gravity drain system, we use valves to control the hydraulics. So that's not just open and close, but throttling to reduce peak flows. And then a solar or line power control panel and communication system. So again, those are the hardware components, and that's linked up to cloud-based software where there's real-time modeling happening on what's the expected rainfall runoff and what should I do now to optimize both water quality and quantity benefits. And just to mention, CMAC is now approved really across the country, but specifically in the Chesapeake Bay, Urban Stormwater Work Group has approved this for the use of dry and wet ponds, and we've seen this now move down into the state level. So MDE also has approval for retrofitting existing dry and wet ponds, but also applying this for new development where space optimization is critically important. So what's really exciting about this is we can take our existing assets, as Lindsay mentioned, that Troy Hill Association already had, and really supercharge the benefits and improve water quality by stacking up volumes, increasing retention time, and promoting that pollutant settling, while also being able to reduce peak flow from the system. So if we move forward, Lindsay, we're not doing a deep dive in design and permitting, but very similar to a traditional stormwater pond retrofit, we have to follow MD 378 requirements in Maryland, as well as dam safety requirements for the use of this technology. And this just shows you some of the red lines that were considered in how we had to change some of the outlet control structures to include that valve that controls the water level upstream. When we think about the design, obviously there's the compliance and the regulatory permitting requirements, but also we're looking at the software and hardware configuration. Hardware is, where do we locate the valve in the system? Where do we locate the level sensor and the control panel to achieve the desired outcome, whether it's water quality or quantity benefit? And the software design, we call it software configuration, where we describe the logic and behaviors that we're trying to achieve. So for example, this is a wet pond facility, pond number 2, and we're actually holding a permanent pool and doing a pre-event drawdown. So parameters like how far in advance do I look at the weather forecast to start drawing down the facility to create additional volume. We look at things like probability and quantity of forecast thresholds and things like that. Lastly, I just want to mention that while the design is critical, we're also thinking about the long-term operations and maintenance. So where are these devices located? How are they accessible? How can they be inspected and maintained is just as equally as important for the long-term success of these projects. And really the big shift here is not only we're getting greater performance, but the new visibility that we get from the real-time dashboards is really a game changer. So what I'm showing on the left here is an actual pre-event drawdown of that same facility, and it's just showing level over time and what the valve is doing below that. So in this case, the valve opened, drew down the facility, and then we held more volume after the event, and that's really where we get the water quality benefits. So again, water quality and quantity benefits. One of the unique things we're also testing on this project is a Hlas skimmer. So if you can see the image on the left, there's a floating device that is intended to help minimize clogging. So over the years, again, looking at operations and maintenance, how do we maximize uptime, performance, and minimize some of those clogging challenges throughout? And I want to turn it back to Lindsay to just summarize some of the benefits from both the technology and this partnership.
Great, thanks, Victor. And I did want to highlight the Hlas skimmer is something, yet another thing that we're looking at how we can make our program adaptable. If we're faced with other challenges, how can we solve those solutions? And so for our partner, Opti, who has been there to help provide those answers and solve those problems, we do appreciate that. And we're constantly thinking outside the box to make things work a bit better. So as we talked about, there are a lot of benefits, right? The environmental benefits. We're looking at phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediment reductions. The county was able to get more than double our MS4 credits on the pond retrofits than what we had been getting previously. So we had a significant increase there. The economic savings, as we mentioned, the partners are saving over $160,000 per year on their stormwater fees. And the county was able to save significantly over the cost of doing a traditional retrofit. So utilizing this technology, we saved a lot of money that we're then able to keep in the Watershed Fund and do additional projects. The community benefit is also great. We talked about flood resilience to the community nearby that is a bit more vulnerable. And of course, watershed health and enhanced sustainability and resilience as a community. So we are thrilled to have this teamwork so successful, and we've been lucky enough to be featured as a BUBA honorable mention, and then also the Water Environment Federation Phase 1 Innovation Award, and a National Association of County Achievement Award for Resiliency in Infrastructure, Energy, and Sustainability. So we're very excited about this project and the partnership and all the things that have come out of it, and looking forward to continuing to implement this type of strategy elsewhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Let me turn my video back on. And let's see if yep, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our presenters. We'll go ahead and jump into Q&A, and we have some in the Zoom. So I'll start with some audience Q&A. How did Howard County determine which retrofit partnerships to pursue? Were there any issues? And then along with that, were there any issues with other private pond owners wanting a partnership with the county?
Great question. So we sent Opti out to find us partners, and it is difficult. As I mentioned, their focus is not stormwater. So it is difficult to get them on board a lot of commercial entities have a lot of layers to get through to get approval to participate. And so it takes a very long time. So when we get an interested player, we are more amenable to working with them and doing what we can to make something work. We unfortunately don't have commercial properties knocking down our door. But we're working to get our message out and share this program and this partnership to get more properties interested and better understand the benefits that they can see. We are thinking that now, just this past year, our stormwater fee was more than doubled. And so we are thinking that that will create an even greater incentive, and we might see more participation in the coming future. Viktor, go ahead and chime in if I missed anything.
No, I think, yeah, spot on. We're hoping the success of this program just helps build, educate others, and we're there to help evaluate.
And this is also a question for your project again, and maybe a question for Viktor. How did you determine the drainage area for a specific pond, and how did you determine what building or impervious surfaces were contributing to what pond?
Yeah, so again, these are existing ponds that were part of the original development. We went back through and did an as-built survey to verify any changes, as well as any sedimentation in the pond. So that those items were surveyed and verified, and that's what was used into our permit compliance and modeling. And I think just piggybacking on that, there was a question of clarifying, how we define the retrofits. So it's interesting, 2 out of the 3 ponds were actually built as dry ponds initially, which don't receive any water quality credit in Maryland. And so with this technology, what we're able to do is actually create an intermittent permanent pool to get water quality credit, so that we're not physically increasing the storage volume, but we're changing the behavior and the hydraulics of the system to improve water quality, as well as stacking some of those volumes higher and for a longer period of time. And I don't think we've heard really I don't know that folks are noticing too much of a change or much direct feedback on that beyond the data.
This is a question, I don't know too much about this, but has Opti considered retrofitting micro turbines to create electricity after the control structures?
It's definitely been a lunch conversation here at Opti to think about. I think it's a great idea, and the whole water energy nexus is really the future. So love to find a partner potentially to look at that.
Yeah, very cool. Maybe we can do a webinar on that in the future, even if it's just theoretical. That's really cool. And then a question for Lindsay about the pollutant reductions. How do you equate total suspended solid reductions to a number of cars?
Good question. Opti actually did that. So Viktor, do you know how Kathy came about that number?
Yeah, so we are able to calculate the expected water quality benefits. So for TSS, the tonnage that's removed from the retrofit based on the Chesapeake Bay retrofit curves. And so we use that total incremental load reduction and just divided it by, what a typical car weighs, just to put it into sort of help visualize what is a ton of sediment in that term. I guess we could have done swimming pools or something like that too, Lindsay.
True.
Zooming out a little bit, and maybe Marissa can take this question first, because of course, as you sort of ended your presentation saying, DOE is in a difficult spot right now with funding. You're having to pause on the next grant cycle, and we all know we're in a difficult environment for this type of work. So for organizations or communities interested in getting involved with these types of programs, or even just finding these alternative sources of funding, but they're just not sure where to start, especially right now. Do you have any advice you would give them? And, folks in the chat too, if you're in a place like this and you're here looking for answers and you want to brainstorm and add to the chat, please feel free. But Curious what your thoughts on this, Marissa, and Lindsay and Victor as well, even big picture thoughts are.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so as you mentioned, we're in kind of a hard spot for this program, which is unfortunate because we see how much heart these grantees put into their work, and I've been to dozens of these sub-grantee events and project visits and things in my time here, and it's definitely one of my favorite parts of my job, getting to and why I wanted to do this work, working with communities on watershed issues. So, I think it's challenging because in some ways for us, at least at, the agency, it's a bit of, we'll have to kind of wait and, and see as budgets improve. But I would say that, I think for this type of work specifically, and, this is more the partnership, softer side, I think, than the very like technical example we just saw as well, is to remove barriers by bringing in partners that you can play to each other's strengths. We brought in the Chesapeake Bay Trust although those weren't budget issues we were dealing with at the time, it was other challenges that we had in how to continue administering this program and the administrative burdens that it had and some of the constraints we had as a government agency to run a program like this. But I think, trying to find those unusual partners, a lot of the projects I shared mentioned, kind of unusual partnerships, maybe looking for funding in areas that traditionally wouldn't fund these type of projects, but have some sort of angle through another area of funding, whether that's arts or education or, something like that, trying to find another way in and then adding in these other elements that you're excited about. I think these projects really show that starting small and building up is important. So I think there's still work that can be done, even if, our program's experiencing these things, but I hope that other similar work can still continue.
Okay. Lindsay or Victor, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. So with our program, it's obviously a little bit different because if folks participate, they're able to save funds. However, we have to find a good amount of funds. So it's similar. We're utilizing the watershed protection fee funds to implement things, but they only go so far. And so also capital budgets and looking for grants ourselves. So it is difficult, but we are pretty much just plugging along the best we can. And when we have an interested partner, we do what we can to continue to find something that'll work.
I recently saw a speaker, a researcher on municipal bond markets, and it's interesting with the federal retrenchment, it seems like there's going to be push down to more state and local governments, which I think it also create an opportunity. So whether it's how we borrow or creative financing structures to address the local needs, could be a positive. We know stormwater is quite local in its challenges, and so maybe this gives autonomy in different ways for folks to think about. So we're optimistic.
No, that's a really positive way of thinking about it. Absolutely. Question about for Howard County, did the county take over responsibility for the long-term maintenance of the facilities, or did you train the property owners, and who bears the cost?
Great question. So we have quite a few documents and agreements with the property owners, of course. The management association still maintains the ponds as they would normally. So Howard County owns the responsibility for maintaining the Opti systems that are there, but the property owners and the HOA, essentially for the association, maintains the ponds and is still responsible for that maintenance and bears that cost as well. Hopefully that answers.
Another question in the Q&A, this one I don't know much about. Can someone point to a Maryland law that allows a municipality to levy a fee on property owners to jointly share in the costs of maintaining stormwater systems?
So I can speak to that a little bit. In 2013, our fee came about, and just prior to that, the state enacted the ability for local jurisdictions to create their own fee. So Howard County put forth our fee in 2013, and that money is stated in code as being allowed to enhance stormwater facilities, retrofit stormwater facilities, do education and outreach, provide grants to nonprofits, things like that. So there are certain statutes and requirements that we have to meet, of course, with the funding. It is its own separate enterprise fund. And so we have to ensure that we're following that. So we levy the fee from every property owner in the county, and that does go into the fund, and then it is distributed between capital projects and private property incentive programs that are also outlined in our code, that we do need to have these incentive programs for residents, nonprofits, and commercial entities to be able to partake in opportunities to receive credit on their fee as well. So hopefully that answers it. We're not, as it says, maintaining stormwater systems. We do a ton of stormwater system maintenance. We have to. We have aging infrastructure. It is critical. So some of the systems we're maintaining, the county-owned ones, and then some similar to this, the property owners on their private property are still responsible for the vast majority of the pond maintenance.
Thank you. Marissa, someone asks, can you expand on the defunding issue at DOEE? Is this a city budget issue or pass-through money from federal government, or both?
Yeah, for this specific program, it's a city government issue. This is funded by 2 local sources, so we don't get any federal funding to support this. But yeah, with just the recent budget challenges, certain programs have had to, funding sources have had to, pivot for other uses. So even though we had kind of dedicated funds for this, it's, yeah, unfortunately, it's just city budget. So, but.
For either of these programs, if you had to start the entire process over, is there anything you would do differently, and why? And anyone can answer this if they would like.
I'll take a stab. Why not? So I think what I would do differently is try to go in with a bit more of an open mind initially and better hear from the property owner what their needs are. So we went in with the model that we had used elsewhere thinking it was going to work, but it was definitely square peg, round hole kind of situation. And so we really, we were close to walking away. We were like, oh, this isn't going to work. We're never going to be able to do this. And then kept brainstorming and brainstorming and brainstorming. So I think maybe just sort of going in with a bigger picture and knowing that we're going to have to be using adaptive management a bit more would have made it a bit easier initially. Obviously, we worked through it all, but yeah, just it takes a lot of patience. I don't know that I would do anything else differently per se.
Great, thank you. Anything to add, Marissa or Victor?
Yeah, sure. I guess for our project, of course, I wasn't here at the inception for when it started, but have been here the last 2 years of the grant program. I think there was already a bit of a shift when we changed to the model with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, realizing that, managing 10 or so grantees a year in-house is not super feasible, especially as many of us that are grant managers have other roles as part of our jobs too. And yeah, I'm not sure how they did that. Honestly, that's a ton of work to manage within the agency. So, we already had kind of shifted that model to free up some of the admin challenges and also have that like increased community impact. But I think one thing that I wish I had more capacity to do in my time here, especially now as this program is going to be paused, is just kind of showcasing the work of the programs even more. I mean, thank you for this opportunity to talk about them now. But I think, there's so much going on. There's so much, so much happening online and storytelling and social media and things. So if it can be hard to kind of break through all of that, but I think, these people put a lot of effort into these projects. You see a lot of really cool community impact. And so I think the more that we can put these projects into kind of the public zeitgeist and just, whether or not people know it's coming from this funding source, although I think it's really important that people do, when you enjoy a program, you enjoy seeing this new project to pop up on your street, that you do know where that comes from. So when you're not seeing more of those types of things, you're questioning, oh, why am I not doing it? Oh, this is no longer funded. And, there's opportunities for you to be an advocate for that type of work. So I think the more we can do to showcase this work, the more that it's just more out there, and that people can point to it when they're not seeing it anymore.
Agreed. I think that's a really good point. And especially it's sort of both sides of things and making sure people can connect the dots with understanding both when something is working well, this is who they have to credit, or, to credit their own stormwater fees, that they can say, oh, this equals that. But almost more challenging when things aren't happening, they know why that money isn't there anymore either. And then, as you said, can be an advocate for it. I really appreciated what Lindsay said in her part of the presentation of like when they see the Clean Water Howard symbol and logo, they know what that means. They know what that's associated with in their communities. I think is a really important point. To zoom out for sort of our last question, we have a couple minutes if anyone else in the audience wants to add any final questions, but I'll zoom out and ask one more. And Viktor sort of touched on this with looking ahead and thinking about how these funding structures are possibly going to shift. But how do you see these types of collaborative and more partnership-based models, or more, thinking about where you can find funding, whether that's through arts funding or education funding, to push in more stormwater projects that aren't being funded in these, what we think of as traditional avenues. But when we think about how these models might change, how do you see that also changing the way stormwater management looks in the future?
Okay, I guess I can start. I think that leveraging these partnerships is really the only way we're going to be able to tackle these future challenges that lie ahead in stormwater management, or, greater watershed issues. These issues impact all of us. So I'm a big believer, because I see it in the work I do every day, that there's, a really transformative power in community education, finding partners and advocates in unlikely places.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is that just me?
Oh,
And everyone else here? Oh, now I can hear you. Sorry, it might have just been me.
okay.
So sorry.
No worries. No. Yeah, no, I think I was just saying that I think finding these kind of unlikely partners and advocates, and, recognizing these issues impact all of us. It's important to meet people where they are, help them find their niche and find how they can be part of this story and be part of these conversations and impactful projects. Of course, there's a ton of work needed on the more technical side, like we were seeing with all these cool digital solutions as part of the more technical infrastructure, stormwater management. But I think this kind of software program gives a tangible way for smaller groups to engage and be part of it, and learn how they can be part of the conversation and eventually get more involved in larger scale projects.
I would agree. I think as the county continues to get future stormwater permits, we just keep knocking off lower hanging fruit, and eventually we have to reach out to these private properties, right? And so we saw an incentive, or in a sort of a win-win situation. We saw a positive that could come out of this, and good for them, good for us, for various reasons. And so reaching out to these private property owners is sort of the future. It really is the only option as the county runs out of our own land to do the work on. We can only saturate our property so much, no pun intended, before we actually have to reach out to others. So I think this is the wave of the future for sure.
We're at Opti, we're really interested in leading the transition to looking at stormwater as an asset. And we believe that being able to demonstrate those outcomes just further supports what Lindsay and Marissa and others are doing with education. And how is that spend resulting in community prosperity and environmental outcomes? So we really believe by directly measuring, we can optimize that capital spend that is limited resources and budgets. So.
Thank you very much. I want to get us out of here on time. I know there were two more more specific questions in the Q&A about costs and O&M. And so I encourage those folks, if they do want to get those questions answered, feel free to email me and I can connect you. But I want to wrap it up here just so we make sure we end on time. Thank you so much to our speakers, Lindsay, Viktor, and Marissa. Thank you for all of you for logging in and watching. And again, if you have any follow-up questions or anything that didn't quite get answered, please feel free to reach out to me or to Missy, and we can make sure that we can connect you and get your questions answered. But thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.